Well, thank you for being online this morning, and we are going to call this San Gabriel Valley Mosquito and Vector Control District Board of Trustees meeting to order this May 13th, 2022 at 7:01 a.m. And we will begin then with our Pledge of Allegiance. And if Trustee Jackie Dornick can lead us, and then I ask everyone else to put yourself on mute. And Jackie, please lead us.
I pledge allegiance. Oh, everybody please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, Becky, you need to unmute.
Thank you. Guilty. Before we do roll call, could we just have a brief overview of the handling of our meeting virtually?
Sure. This meeting will be conducted under the guidance of AB 361, which is the continuing resolution that was passed by Governor Newsom to allow for public meetings to be conducted virtually. So we'll move forward this morning's agenda with via Zoom and simultaneously cast the meeting for the public on YouTube.
All right. Thank you very much. And then could we please have roll call?
Yes. Alhambra.
Here.
Arcadia. Arcadia. Azusa.
Present.
Baldwin Park. Bradbury. Claremont. Covina. Duarte.
Present.
Almonte.
Present.
Glendora.
Present.
Industry. Industry. Irwindale.
Irwindale present.
La Puente.
Present.
Laverne.
Present.
Good morning, sir.
LA County.
Thank you.
Can I get regular hot tea?
Monrovia.
Here.
Monterey Park.
Here.
Pasadena.
Pasadena present.
Pomona.
Here.
Rosemead.
Present.
San Dimas. San Dimas. San Gabriel.
Chaka present.
Sierra Madre.
And Cecilia, Trustee Vidar from San Dimas is present. He was muted.
Thank you.
Yeah, John Capos is present.
Thank you. South Pasadena.
Bob Joe
But
present.
you guys weren't coming, so I had already.
Temple City.
Present.
Walnut.
Present.
West
Juanas
Covina.
present. West Covina present.
Thank you
And
so much.
also, industry is here. Catherine Marcucci is here.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. With that, we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I think that's the most absences we've had in a long time. Hope everyone is okay and glad we have a quorum this morning. So we will then move on to item 1.3, order of business. Is there any need to prioritize any agenda item or any emergency items we need to take care of?
No.
Thank you very much. And then we will move on then to item 2, opportunity for public comment on non-agenda items. Have we received any requests for public comment on non-agenda items?
No comments, no.
Okay, and not seeing any raised hands. then we will close that portion and we will move on to our consent calendar, which is comprised of items 3.1 to 3.8. Did we have any public comment on our consent calendar?
No public comment.
Finley, move approval.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Was there any questions or need? I'm sorry, I heard somebody say something. Okay, and not having any public comment or need to pull any item for further discussion, can we please have a roll call? And a motion in a second, please. Can we have a roll call vote?
Yes, and can I clarify who the second was, please?
I believe that was that?
Carrie.
No, okay, we had a
Trustee
motion.
Velasco?
Yes, you can put me down.
I second it. Oh,
I think it was Joseph Leon that who seconded. it.
yes, I second it.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'll take the roll call vote. Alhambra,
Yes.
Arcadia? Sorry. Azusa,
Yes. Yes.
Duarte,
Yes.
Almonte,
Yes, yes.
Glendora,
Yes.
Industry,
Yes.
Erwindale,
Irwindale, yes.
La Puente,
Yes.
Laverne,
Yes.
Monrovia,
Yes.
Monterey Park,
Yes.
Pasadena,
Yes.
Pomona,
Yes.
Rosemead, San Dimas,
Yes.
San Gabriel,
Yes.
Sierra Madre,
Yes.
South Pasadena,
Yes.
Temple City,
Yes.
Yes.
West Covina.
Yeah.
Great, Thank you.
Cecilia, yes for Rosemead.
Thank you so much.
Thank
This
you
has the
very much.
motion passes.
Thank you very much. Item 4, we do not have any presentations this morning. So we'll move on to item 5, Board of Trustees potential return to in-person meetings update. Did we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment, no.
All right, and this is just for further discussion or update in discussing this with Jason and John yesterday when we went over it for meeting prep. If I understand it correctly, the current timeline is for the emergency orders to be lifted at the end of June. In further discussion though with staff, we really, and Jason, maybe you want to comment on this. We really do not have currently the wherewithal or the ability to really provide a hybrid meeting format. Jason, did you want to comment at all on that?
Yeah, just like we have discussed in the past, the hybrid is a little bit more difficult for us because we're such a big body, and the room that we meet in, it would take quite a bit of modification. So in the short term, since any hybrid situation would just be temporary, it really doesn't make sense for us to invest heavily in that. If any permanent legislation passes where a hybrid situation is outlined a little bit more clearly and is acceptable, then we can discuss, doing some, heavy modification or investing in the technology to do something hybrid. But at this time, it doesn't really make sense. So we should remain virtual as long as the board would like to do that. And when either we can't or the board would like to return, then we should fully return to in-person meetings.
And the feeling is, or our discussion was that the likelihood is we will return to in-person meetings in July. And so stay tuned. We will have a discussion then at our June meeting, but it is looking that most likely we would return in July unless something else drastically happens between now and then. Jackie, you have your hand raised?
May I just make a comment, please?
Sure.
Two groups, the Board of Governors and the California Association of Realtors, just had their meetings in Sacramento, and numerous people came back with COVID. So the numbers are better, but I know a number of people that are out very ill at this time.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, I think we'll know more by the end of June. Just like everything else with COVID, it's a moving target. And so we'll see. But yes, I've known several people. Fortunately, they haven't become very ill. Mr. Capocha.
Yeah, I want to just support that thought that we just continue this way. We're going to do the budget a little bit here, but you're going to see that it's just imperative that we keep our costs down. And I'm concerned by trying to go to a hybrid model that we burden our staff a lot with trying to figure this out, aside from spending money to do it. Numbers are on the rise again. I think, as you said, Becky, everything COVID is very uncertain. So we should just continue on the path we have until we get, notification from the state or the county that, it is safe to go back to meeting in person. So I just want to support that.
Yeah. Thank you. Margaret?
Becky, we discussed this at the last meeting, and other than a couple of people, or was this in personnel, we talked it over, that I think the number of people that wanted to stay virtual, if we could, was greater by most. Okay, so that's what we will do if we can do it. Okay, all right.
Yeah, as I understand, the last dates that I'm aware of, there was a June 30th date, and there's obviously the pending legislation that would memorialize the hybrid models, and don't know when those will be finalized or approved. So we're thinking that at least until our June meeting will be virtual, let's put it that way. So we'll see how things progress. So long as we can meet virtually. I guess the comment I was trying to make is we had talked about the hybrid model, and as John pointed out, you'll see in our budget, we shouldn't be spending more money on something like that, and it would probably take some doing for us to create a hybrid model. So for right now, we'll stay tuned and we'll come back with updates in June. But for right now, we're going to continue virtually. That was a long way of saying that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Becky.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay. All right. We will move on then to item 6. And this is our only action item this morning. Consideration of the draft annual budget for fiscal year 2022-2023. And I'll just note that the Finance Committee was not able to convene. They could not get a quorum. So this presentation is going to be a more in-depth presentation without the recommendation from the Finance Committee. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jason, and he will provide our presentation on our draft annual budget. And did we have, I'll ask, did we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jason.
All right, thank you very much, Madam President. So this morning I would like to present the draft annual budget for fiscal year 22-23. A copy of the budget is in your packet beginning on page 41. So before we dive into the numbers, I do want to talk about some of the challenges that impacted the preparation of the budget. And I want to start by saying that the last 5 years have been a major period of growth for the district. We've seen growth in full-time staffing, programs and initiatives, our fleet and equipment, building and safety upgrades, and competitive pay. And so this period of growth was desperately needed. And as a result, we've seen a remarkable evolution of our program. The modernization of our operation and the improved efficiency of our programs have really allowed us to optimize every penny of our assessment. With that said, I think now that it's time to pump the brakes a little bit. So this budget is going to be a little bit different than what we've seen in recent history. It's not going to be a growth budget at all. Let me go through why that is. We face three major challenges this year that were incorporated in this budget. The first is salaries and benefits as a percentage of our total budget. The second is inflation. And the third is meeting the rising costs of our CalPERS and OPEB obligations. So let me run through each of these really quickly. With salaries and benefits, we've seen steady increases over the years. And I think the best way to measure this is to look at it, look at the cost as a percentage of our total budget. So in 2017, salaries and benefits made up 71% of our total budget or of our revenue. And today we're looking at 86%. You can see the steady increase over time. And these increases are due to the addition of full-time positions, the recent comp and class increases, improvements to benefits over time, and then of course the rising costs of medical and retirement. So these costs will continue to rise year over year. Even with a static budget, these costs will always rise. So we need to plan and prepare for that. But more importantly, as a percentage of our total budget, 86% is just way too high. And so we'll need to bring that number down. Ideally, we want to stabilize somewhere between 70 and 80%. And so that's a lot of money. It's a lot of changes that we need to make. So it's not going to happen in one budget cycle, but we need to really start looking now, and we need to work on it over time. So we can bring that number down in two ways. We can increase revenue or eliminate full-time positions. And I think it's going to be a little bit both over the next several years. So we have started the process here in this budget, and I'll explain when we get into the budget how we've done it this year and what we kind of plan to do over time. Next, let's look at inflation. In March, the CPI for Los Angeles, the Consumer Price Index, was reported as an increase of 8.5% over last year. And the three biggest factors for the district are going to be the price of gasoline, the price of our basic supplies, and then of course any contract services that we have. All of this has been taken into consideration in preparing this budget. And even despite the steep inflation, we were able to cut operational expenditures across the board, but it did limit how deep we could make those cuts. And this will also reduce the likelihood of any significant surplus in the future, which is a really important point that we're going to come back to quite a few times during the budget review. The 8.5% increase in CPI also motivated a 1.5% cost of living increase for all full-time employees. And third, let's talk about unfunded liability. From our in-depth review of this subject and our lengthy discussion earlier in the year, we knew that this was going to be a tough pill to swallow this year. If we look at our CalPERS and our OPEB contributions over the years, again, as a percentage of our revenue, we can see that costs are all over the board. We are at 1% in 2017-18. We're proposing, in this proposed budget, we're looking at 9%. And this variability is due to the fact that surplus and reserve funds have historically been used to pay these liabilities. So our surplus funds, or any money that's left over from the previous year, gets carried over into the current budget. And so a lot of these obligations were paid using surplus. So sometimes it was a little, sometimes it was a lot, depending upon the surplus. But it was never really consistent year over year. And now, because we're prioritizing this and we really want to bring these numbers down, we want to reduce the impact of the interest that we're paying on this debt. We're going to focus on this. We're going to prioritize on this, which means that we need to contribute more and we need to stabilize those costs so that we can, fully meet our minimum obligations as well as forecast for future budgets.
Jason,
yes.
Jason, I just wanted to ask something for clarification on the surplus. Year over year, what would you categorize those surpluses being a result as? I mean, where did those surpluses come from? If you could explain that.
Sure. The surpluses, we have our salaries and benefits, we have our operational costs, which are our two major expenditures. So it's either we saved money somewhere during the year, we didn't spend as much on building improvements or on supplies, that money gets carried over. But the majority of our surpluses that you're going to see when we review the budget over the years have been due to full-time positions being out on some kind of medical leave or positions that have remained unfilled for a significant amount of time. You'll see in 2020, we had significant reserves because we had two full-time staff members out for nearly a year. So almost their entire salary was acted as a surplus.
I just wanted to highlight that because that's not a very constant or predictable number.
Right. Yeah, it's extremely unpredictable, actually. And which is why my goal now is to work 100% of these minimum obligations for CalPERS into our budget without the need of surplus. And that's going to be that again. That can't happen in one budget cycle. It can't happen overnight because we're changing our practices. But eventually that will be my goal to get there, and we'll move there incrementally. And so we'll be able, once we get there, we'll be able to forecast and budget for our minimum obligations every single year inside the budget. So we made some good headway this year, but most of this 9% is still covered by surplus funds, which is technically okay, but surplus funds, like you said, are unreliable. So we need a payment strategy that's a little bit more consistent. Okay, so with that said, with those challenges, let's see, move forward here. All right, so with that said, let's jump into the budget. So today I'll present to you a balanced budget with reserves and expenditures totaling $6,413,203. And I promised Vice President Capocha that I would add as often as I possibly could that those surplus funds are included in this number. And so you'll see that in a little bit, and we'll be talking a lot about that. So let's start with the revenue. And we'll look at the engineer's report that's on the bottom of page 82 in your packet. And here we see the total number of parcels forecasted for our assessment. It's just over 383,000, and that's an increase of 478 parcels over last year. And that brings us a total assessment revenue of 5.6 million, and that's an increase of $290,193 over last year. The assessment revenue is made up of a $14.76 assessment rate, and that's an increase of 46 cents per parcel, which will generate an estimated $175,563. All right, any questions on that? And we'll review the engineer's report after the budget review.
I don't see any raised hands, Jason.
Okay. All right, so next let's look at the revenue summary with the budget on page 45 of your packet. All right, so there's several boxes on that page. This is the top chart here. And here we're looking at our revenues from our assessments. We have assessments and our delinquent assessments totaling for 5.6 million. In this next box here, we have all of the interest from our interest-bearing accounts. And that brings in an additional 35,000. And that gives us a subtotal of 5.7 million. And this is the amount before reserves or surplus. This is really our operating budget. This is where we want to be in the future. Because this is so important, and because I think it needs to be a little bit more clear, we've added the addition of reserves and surplus right here in the revenues section so that we can see exactly how much of our budget is being padded by our dedicated reserves and our previous year surpluses. And so if you look here, you'll see that the numbers are zeroed out for prior years. That's because we haven't reported this in this way before. So just for our purposes here, for comparing this budget with previous budgets, I'll add in the numbers from the previous years, and you can see how our $712,000 surplus and reserves compares to previous years. And that gives us our operating budget of $6.4 million. All right, next, let's move to our expenditures. The expenditures in this chart are in the same page on the chart below on page 45. Our salaries and benefits came in at 4.9 million, and that is 234,939 over our proposed budget last year. Our maintenance and operations came in at close to 1.4 million, and that is 228,000 below our adopted budget last year. So we tried to offset some of our salaries and benefits increase with these cuts to our operating budget, and we came very close to doing that. Next, we have our capital outlay. Because we don't need any more major improvements, and we've done a lot of the safety improvements to the building, and because contract services and building costs are so high, we really minimize the amount of capital projects that we're going to be doing this year, and we reduce that capital outlay from $430,000 proposed last year to $57,500 this year, reducing that line item by $372,500. And that gives us our total expenditures. Now, if you look here in this bottom line, you'll see that there's a negative number across the board for our historical data. This is where those surplus reserves and those the surplus and reserve numbers were included in the budget. It was included as a negative. So just so, and as you can see, we have a zero here because we're not reporting it that way. So if we're going to compare total expenditures, again, I'll add that in for consistency. And we're looking at a budget that's $133,000 more than the proposed budget last year. All right, so now, like I mentioned, we don't have anything new that we're introducing in this budget or that we're needing to pay for. We're really cutting back. So really the last thing to do is just kind of run through where those cuts are coming from. And so if we look at our operating expenditures by department, we went through every department to see where we could tighten the belt. And we were able to do that with every department except administration. And we were able to save 9% across each department for operating expenditures for a total of $129,401. Now, I really want to stress here that these cuts are looking at efficiencies and looking at things that we maybe have needed in previous years but don't need this year because we're not growing. So we were able to make these cuts without making any sacrifices to our current programs or our services. So there will be no change to programs and services this year. Next, we'll look at our salaries and benefits. In the surveillance department, we have 2 open positions that we will not be filling in this next fiscal year. And that cut $230,000 from that salaries and benefits. And this cut alone brought us down from an 89% salaries and benefits ratio to that 86% that you saw. So these are the kinds of things that we need to do to bring those numbers back in line. And finally, we'll review our capital outlay and reserves. So the reserve line item includes all of these numbers, and these are planned uses of our dedicated reserve funds. So first, we have a vehicle replacement program. Usually we replace 2 vehicles every year. And because we got an additional underground vehicle last year, we're able to cut that down to 1 this year and stay on our replacement program. So we'll be purchasing and modifying 1 vehicle at a cost of $42,500. And then we have our building and improvements. There was $100,000 that was approved for the renovation of the operations building. We've used about 35,000 of that already. The building is actually in really good shape with just that little bit of money. The walls are repaired, fresh paint, brand new floors. We were even able to expand the women's locker room a little bit. And so there's still some more work to be done, but that's now a usable space. It's a comfortable, usable space. So we're going to bank that extra $55,000 because contract services are so high. We can continue that work in the future. And we're just carving out $15,000 to kind of finish up what we're doing, and whatever we decide to do with that space, we'll need a little bit of money to configure that space for that.
Jason, could you comment on, for those of us that were around for that conversation regarding the sewer at one time, what measures we're taking? We're not disregarding that item. What measures we're taking to make sure that our sewer is in good operating shape?
Yeah, about 3 years ago, we were finding that our mainline sewer was backing up quite a bit. And every time the plumber came out and did the flush, sent the camera in, it's a very old infrastructure, and it is failing. So we have a recommendation that if the main line keeps backing up and keeps failing, that we would need to replace it at considerable cost. So we started a preventative maintenance program where we get that line flush multiple times a year. And since we've done that, we haven't had any issues. So we'll continue with this preventative maintenance program and monitor the integrity of the system. And for now, it isn't nearly as imperative that we replace the entire system all at once. We can continue with this preventative maintenance, and we should get some more life out of the existing system.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then lastly, here we have our pension liability. And this was discussed earlier in the year as part of our program. Out of the money that we dedicated for pension, I saved $243,000, actually $400,000. We'll be using $243,000 this year. We saved $400,000 and held it back because even if we pay down our existing debt, if we let new debt accumulate, it'll kind of offset. So we really need to work on both ends of the problem here. And so what this will do is, if there's any new base liability that comes during this fiscal year, we'll be able to address it right away. So we don't know what that number is. Those numbers generally come out in July or August. Once we do, we'll be able to do a mid-year additional discretionary payment, and we'll be able to address as much of that as possible. Sometimes that number is a negative, or if it's less than this $243,000, then we'll bank this money and we'll do the same thing next year. If it's more, then we'll pay off as much as we can, and then we'll have to take out debt through CalPERS to pay the rest, and then it will be added into our unfunded liability. All right. And finally, that brings us to our designated reserves and our grand total reserves. And I know you probably can't read this chart, but it is on page 63 and 64. And really just what I wanted to show you here is that even with our reserve designations, our reserve accounts will come in just over $1 million or $1.2 million. And that's right about 20% of our revenue, which is exactly where we want to be for those accounts. And that concludes my presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Trustee Dornick.
Has this committee or this organization been hit with any demands to go hybrid on any of your vehicles?
No, only in this in the board. The board has suggested it, and we are looking into it to either go all electric or go hybrid. Yeah, so that would require us to build out a little bit of the infrastructure. The hybrid options aren't as great for the heavy duty trucks that we need, but there's a lot of all electric options that are coming out that are looking very promising.
I just didn't know how the governor's mandate affected this department. Thank you.
Mhm.
Something definitely to watch. Do we have any other questions or comments? Did we have any public comment on this item? Forgotten if
No
I asked.
public, that's okay. No public comment.
Thank you. Well, without any further questions or discussion, and I want to thank staff. I think you did a great job. Thank you, Jason, for being conservative and looking after our money. So if the board,
President Shevlin, really quickly, just a huge thank you to Rose. Rose Alba put so much hard work into this, and she did a great job this year as always. So wanted to mention her.
thank you. Then if the board concurs, then I'm looking for a motion then to approve the draft annual budget for fiscal year 2022-23. And direct staff to prepare a resolution to order collection of special benefit property taxes inclusive of the fiscal year 22-23 annual budget. And I think we've got a motion by Lloyd Johnson.
I'll second it.
I'll second.
Okay, I think Jerry got in there first, so we have a motion and a second. Okay, then without any further discussion, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Wait 1 second.
And I just wanted to reiterate, this is a draft budget, and the final budget then will be coming back to us in June for formal adoption. Got some pretty mountains there.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. Okay, and go ahead. Alhambra.
Yes.
Thank you. Azusa.
Yes.
I believe Bradbury. Bradbury.
Yes.
Duarte.
Yes.
Almonte.
Yes.
Glendora.
Yes.
Industry.
Yes.
Irwindale. Irwindale.
Yes.
La Puente.
Yes.
Laverne.
Yes.
Monrovia.
Yes.
Monterey Park.
Yes.
Pasadena.
Yes.
Pomona.
Yes.
Rosemead.
Yes.
San Dimas.
Yes.
San Gabriel.
Yes.
Sierra Madre.
Yes.
South Pasadena.
Yes.
Temple City.
Yes.
Walnut.
Yes.
West Covina.
Yes, and I'd like to say real fast, if I may, I want to thank Jason and Rose and the rest of the staff. I think they done a fantastic job in this preliminary budget. We didn't get a chance to look at it, but I think it's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Johnson. Okay, then with that, we have an adopted draft budget. And again, that will be coming back to us in June for a formal adoption of our 22-23 annual budget. And again, thank you to staff. Okay, moving on then to item 7, the review of preliminary engineers report for fiscal year 22-23. And that will be, Jason, are you taking this one as well?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to introduce Melanie Lee from SCI Consulting Group. This is the firm that prepares our report. And so she can give us a brief explanation of what the engineer's report is and why it's important. And then she'll be available if anyone has any questions.
Great, thank you. Melanie.
Hi, good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So good morning. My name is Melanie Lee. I am a consultant with SCI Consulting Group. Just a bit of background information on SCI. We are a public finance consulting firms. We have worked with public agencies over the last 35 years on revenue enhancement measures and levy administration. We provide a variety of services, including public opinion surveys, feasibility studies, planning services, and revenue measures. I am here today because we are the annual levy administrator on behalf of the district. And what does that mean? Part of what we do for levy administration services is we follow the guidelines that are provided by the California Constitution for assessments. And in 1996, the district approved their assessment for additional revenue. And around the same time, there was the vote by the California registered voters on Proposition 218. It was approved by registered voters in 1996, but it was officially started in 1997. And assessments that were formed around that time had to reballot so that they could fall in line with the requirements of Prop 218. Vector was actually grandfathered in, vector control was grandfathered in, and it didn't have to reballot to confirm the assessment. With Proposition 218, it requires an engineer's report, an annual budget, different quantifications for general versus special benefit. But because the district was, again, grandfathered in, it doesn't necessarily have to do an engineer's report. And for many, many years, the district didn't do an engineer's report. It was requested by Jared. And it was requested specifically to provide transparency to the community members and also align with the requirements of Prop 218. What this engineer's report does is it looks at benefit factors. It provides the upcoming budget for the district, the number of parcels that are subject to the assessment, the rate, the assessment methodology, and also an assessment diagram, which shows the boundaries of the district. And so this is actually for budget information. Next month, we will, there's a resolution that will go before the board. It will approve the engineer's report, and it'll hold a public hearing, and it will allow, if the board approves, it will allow us to put the assessments on the property tax bill.
Great. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions about the report? And it can be found here on page 66 of your packet, the full report. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I was sitting there talking and I had my mic muted. Anyway, thank you very much for that report. I think everyone can agree this is a very important aspect of our district. Obviously, this is our source of income. And it's we really need to know and be transparent as to where those monies are coming from and how that's calculated. So thank you very much. And then this is only for information and discussion this morning. It will, as Melanie indicated, it will be coming back next month for formal adoption, and that will, as presented in our draft budget, we have a 0.46 increase in our proposed in our assessment for the next fiscal year. Okay, thank you, Melanie. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. And did we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, you guys are being a very quiet group this morning. Moving on then to item 8, district administration. Those are items 8.1 to 8.5. Did we have any public comment on any of those items?
No public comment.
Okay, and I will turn this over then to Jason to provide his report.
All right, so a few quick things. So the committee meeting notifications. The Finance and Audit Committee has a choice. The draft budget, there were no recommended changes to the draft budget. So the formal budget that will be put forth next month will be exactly what you see here. So there's no reason for the Finance and Audit Committee to meet, but if you would like to meet and review that document before it comes to the board, you can. So Trustee Johnson, I'll leave it to you to decide and let us know if you'd like to meet to review that document. We will also need the Policy and Personnel Committee before next meeting. So if you guys could be on deck and be prepared to hear from and respond to Cecilia to get that coordinated, we would appreciate it. Next, I have our monthly COVID update. So the district remains in compliance with all the state and county masking and reporting guidelines. And this includes the newly released Cal OSHA standards. The district requires that all employees continue to wear masks in public spaces and while interacting with others within 6 feet of distance. And all employees, regardless of vaccination status, are allowed to remove their masks while working alone at their workstations. In the last month, the district has not experienced any absences or interrupted service due to illness. Right. Next is a receive and file. I'd like to call your attention to the annual update of our cooperative agreement between our agency and the California Department of Public Health. Cecilia, can you turn to that page? It's on page 87 of your packet. And this is something that gets renewed every year. It's actually a pretty important agreement between us and the state. And this agreement governs our use of pesticides for public health purposes. So I just want to let everybody know that that has been updated and filed. Next, I have the results of the Lafaco commissioner and alternate elections. So let's see, Jerry Gladback will serve as Lafaco's voting representative, and Melvin Matthews will serve as the alternative representative, with both terms ending May 4th, 2026. And finally, in my district update, I'd like to report that a lot of work has been completed to repair the operations building, like I mentioned before. The walls have been repaired and painted, and the new floor has been installed. The women's locker room has been expanded slightly to include additional locker space and a secluded changing area. I would also like to report that we are in the final stages of the interview process for the Director of Scientific Programs, and we hope to have that position filled very soon. And lastly, I want to conclude my report by recognizing the trustees who either issued proclamations for California Mosquito Awareness Week or have invited us to present at their city council meetings. We had a lot of action this last month, and I want to also thank our Director of Communications, Levy Sun, because he did his city council tour, visiting quite a bit of city councils in the last month. So I'd like to thank President Shevlin in the city of Monrovia, Trustee Sham in the city of Alhambra, Trustee Gonzalez in the city of Azusa, Trustee Finley in the city of Duarte. They'll be meeting in June, and Levy will be attending that meeting. Trustee Marcucci in the city of Industry, Trustee Velasco, the city of El Monte, Trustee Rasmussen, city of Laverne, Trustee Joe, South Pasadena, Trustee Menchaca for San Gabriel, and Trustee Johnson of the city of West Covina. So as always, your participation is very much appreciated. And there will be another opportunity in June to issue a proclamation regarding National Mosquito Control Awareness Week. So if you haven't gotten a chance to participate in the California Mosquito Awareness Week, you'll have another opportunity in June, and you can watch your email for a template proclamation coming in from Levy in the next couple weeks. And that concludes my report.
Great. Do we have any questions of Jason? Not seeing any. Like I said, we're a quiet group this morning. Okay, moving on then to item 9, committee reports. Do we have any public comment under committee reports? Okay, not seeing any. Then item 10, trustee reports. Do any of our trustees have any reports or possible announcements? Not seeing any there. Okay, under new business, I was just talking with Jason and also Vice President Capocha. We will try to convene, I'll do better than that. We will convene, hopefully, a joint meeting of our executive board and the personnel committee to discuss our ongoing issues relating to our interim director position and how we are going to go forward with that, and we'll bring back a report in June. Jason will have served as our interim beginning in August. How fast 6 months go by. So at any rate, we will convene a joint meeting of the Executive Board and Personnel and bring back a report in June. Okay, then,
Becky?
yes,
Becky, it's
Yes.
Bob Joe.
yes, Bob.
I just wanted to mention that I watched one of the news stations, and Ivy's son did a fantastic job explaining about mosquitoes
Uh-huh.
and the program and actually the agency itself. So I just wanted to thank Ivy for all that.
Yeah.
It was very impressive.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, very good. And I was going to include under my new business, I don't know about you, but as you're scrolling or surfing the internet or on Facebook or whatever, and you get these little pop-ups, and they're promoting from time to time all sorts of little gadgets on how you can get rid of mosquitoes. And it might, since you brought up Levy, that it might be in the future, and since we're entering mosquito season, maybe a little primer or letting us know how many of these little gadgets and lotions and whatnot are actually of any use to us whatsoever, and to save your money.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Levy.
Becky, can I say
Yes.
something?
Yes.
I just wanted to thank Levy. I forgot to tell him earlier that the city of West Virginia City Council was very impressed by his presentation. They wanted me to relay that message to him. They were thankful that he came and he gave a fantastic report. Thank you, Levy.
Yeah, yeah.
Trustee Johnson.
Yeah, and there are a lot of ads and promotions out there, though, as how you can spend your money to alleviate mosquitoes, but not all of them are very very productive or efficient. So
Becky?
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
Menchaca, I wanted
Yes.
to also just compliment Levy for, not only did he go to our city council meeting, but that was a big night for us. We honored our outstanding older American that night, that happens to be Florence Lynn from the Asian Youth Center. And that was a great connection that Levy has now made with our Chinese community to spread the information about the work that's being done there and how they can be a great resource. So the timing was perfect. He just had to stay a little longer because the presentation ended up being a little longer. But I think he can agree it was well worth it. He made a lot of good contacts that day.
Absolutely. And thank you, Trustee Menchaca, for that connection.
Yeah. We also have, Levy has a great and a robust Bite Back program. And this year it's more aimed at educators. And if you ever have a chance to watch any of those segments, they're great and provide lots of information. I know that just recently we had one that provided information from one of our local nonprofits, Food Ed. So thank you very much for that. Sandra, I'm seeing your.
Yes, thank you so much. I just want to echo everybody's sentiments about Levy. In my full-time job, I have to attend many council meetings, and every single council meeting, I would turn around. I'm like, hey, hi, Levy, how are you doing? So, he was out there really representing our board, and I just wanted to share that with all of you.
Right. And I'll underscore too, as Jason provided in our draft budget review, that we are not cutting any of our vital programs and educational outreach. So thank you very much. We're doing our jobs. Okay.
Thank you to the board for the support.
Thank you. So going forward, then there are no other items on our.
Becky, can I add something real
Yes,
quick?
sure.
Sorry, Cecilia just reminded me here that the Finance and Audit Committee will have to meet to approve the investment policy. So I stand corrected there. Finance and Audit Committee, you're on deck.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. And then our next meeting will be June 10th, 2022, and that will be conducted virtually. So there you go. And everyone have a great month. We'll see you next month. Stay cool. It's going to be a warm weekend. And thank you very much for joining us this morning. We are adjourned at 7:50.